In 1997, a video game changed the landscape. GoldenEye 007 on the N64 came out and it was amazing. It defined multiplayer shooting at the time and first-person shooting, and it also showed that having a Bond license wasn't a license to kill, but a license to print money, like that one. After that one, a slew of other Bond games came out. I talked about a lot of them on my last video. Go and check that out. There should be a card or something there. And I told you which was the actual best Bond game of all time. But what happens after you've struck gold? How did one of the gaming industry's biggest money makers, the interactive license to Bond, go from one of the most prestigious things to have in gaming to being something that no game developer wanted to touch for over a decade? I'm currently waiting on bated breath to see whether IO Interactive can bring Bond back to his best. I can't wait to play the game, fingers crossed. However, this video isn't about that. This video is about the games that we have forgot, the forgotten gem that was actually Sean Connery's last appearance as Bond. It's about the Call of Duty clones. We've all played a few of them in our time. And of course, it is about an anniversary celebration that was so crap, it killed the license for over a decade. Let's jump into it and see how many of these Bond games you can remember when we look at Bond's forgotten games.
I wondered what it would feel like if I ever saw you again. Now I know.
That's for walking out on me.
After GoldenEye, obviously the pressure was on. Rare had created a behemoth of a multiplayer game that defined what was coming for the next few years, even generations up to now. Now, just so you know, I'll take any of you on GoldenEye, slappers only, rockets only. You can be your job, whatever you want, I'll kick your ass. But Rare wanted to stick it to the man. They didn't want constraints on them. They wanted their own IP. Why make a game for the most famous spy in history when you can create a game that has an alien in wearing an American waistcoat? Joking aside though, Perfect Dark, the unofficial Rare follow-up to GoldenEye on the N64, is an absolute banger. It's a great game. Joanna Dark needs a renaissance, not that crap that they got on the Xbox 360, Perfect Dark Zero. Stay away from that. But it meant that the Bond game didn't have Rare at the helm anymore. This wasn't just the hard second album, as they call it. This was the hard second album, but most of the band had left, and the only person left was Ringo. By the way, that's a joke. Ringo, my man, he's a creative genius.
I suffered dreadfully, and no one cares.
Instead, the license was given to Electronic Arts, unlike them, to see something making money and go, we'll have a bit of that. It was given to a company called Black Ops Entertainment in order to make the game, and the game was going to be based on the next movie, Tomorrow Never Dies, and also be a PS1 exclusive. Right from the start, the game was stuck in a bit of an identity crisis. They originally wanted to make the game following the events of the film. That would give them a bit more creative freedom, and obviously make it so the game was fun. However, earlier sort of feedback groups and things that they did said they wanted to relive the actual events of the movie. So this led to sort of a messy development cycle, and as we all know, messy development cycles make for great games. Releasing in 1999, Tomorrow Never Dies moved away from the first-person aspect that made GoldenEye so popular and moved into third person. Now, while not a terrible game, it was inevitably compared to its legendary predecessor, and it was nowhere near it. The gameplay was alright, but quite repetitive, and although stealth was advertised a lot when the game came out, it came out a year after Metal Gear Solid, and compared to its stealth, it was like Prince Andrew in a Pizza Express sniper wolfing down a calzone in the corner, trying not to sweat.
I have shamed myself and my people.
Because the stealth was quite broken and often led to mindless firefights that you would have with really quite simplistic AI that would normally shoot at walls and friends rather than you. The game did try to bring in some Bond spectacle, loosely following the plot of the story. It included some skiing sections and some driving sections, but these were criticised because they were shit. But perhaps the most damning part of the game was the length. It could be completed in a few hours, and when you're being compared to a legendary game that came out before you, it cut the multiplayer, which had made GoldenEye so good and become synonymous with the Bond games, even after just one version of it. Tomorrow Never Dies is not a terrible game. There'll be a few out there who played it when it came out and have fond memories with it, but it just felt down like a watered down game that there were better versions of already on the PS1. It came to show that you can't just stick 007 on the side of something and it will be profitable. Ask Timothy Dalton that.
Stay back! Or the ginger nut gets it!
May I help you?
A dry martini. Shaken, not stout.
Certainly, Commander Bond.
After a shaky start, Electronic Arts started to find their footing, and they released a string of successful games on the PS2, which I think are some of the best Bond games of all time, and I talked about them in my last video. Go and have a look after this one if you want to see that. They included Agent Under Fire, Nightfire, and the movie blockbuster-esque Everything or Nothing, which I think is the best game of all time when it comes to the Bond franchise. Well, for now,
Don't give me hope.
those last two games starred Pierce Brosnan. However, Pierce Brosnan's tenure as 007 was coming to an end. So EA found themselves in a strange predicament. They had the license to make EA Bond games, but there was no Bond. The solution was a bit mad, but also pretty clever, and I hate Prison EA, so you know that must be true. Instead of having a generic Bond-like character, like they did in Agent Under Fire, they decided to go back to many people's favourite Bond. They decided to go to From Russia with Love from 1963, which was a bit of a strange choice, as it's not as action-packed as many Bond movies are, which make great video games, but it was more of a methodical spy thriller. However, they had an ace up their sleeve, and this is something to remember for a pub quiz in the future, because it could come up. They managed to get Sean Connery back as Bond. Years after he had retired as Bond, and quite famously grew tired of the character, Sean Connery not only agreed to give his 1963 likeness for the film, but he also agreed to record completely new dialogue for the game. And it was his 8th and final appearance as Bond.
Who are you?
The name is Bond. James Bond.
His reasons for doing it were pretty personal, not just a big bag of EA cash. From Russia with Love was his favourite Bond film, and his grandchildren were avid video game players, so he wanted to make a game that he could play with the grandkids. Isn't that sweet? He did the pretty rock and roll thing of recording all of his lines from his home in the Bahamas, which that would be nice, wouldn't it? And Connery stepped in the 007 shoes for the final time. Well, he's probably stepped in the Hawaiian shorts and had a Mai Tai, but he was still Bond. Released in 2005, From Russia with Love was a tribute to the Connery era Bond films, and it was also made by the company that later went on to make Dead Space. Now, Sean Connery in a space survival horror game, that's something I need to see. The game used an evolution of the Everything or Nothing engine, which had worked so well previously, and was a third-person cover-based mix with some brawling style that mimicked Connery's sort of fighting style in the films. But the feel and the story is where the game really excelled. It didn't just follow the plot of From Russia with Love, it actually expanded the world, added new scenes in, while also obviously recreating locations and parts of the original film. Now, to add more action in, they actually added gadgets in from future films, like the Aston Martin DB5, and most notably the jetpack from Thunderball. Because the focus wasn't on sticking to the original plot, it was on making a fun game. The game had a lot of likenesses in from the original film, including Robert Shaw as Red Grant, and even Desmond Llewellyn as Q. But it also had new characters in, including Natasha Bedingfield playing the Prime Minister's daughter, which, when I first saw, I thought I was in a fever dream. It's a strange UK 2005 time capsule, but it does allow me to put this joke in. Are you ready? The script of the original movie was used for most of the game, but
The rest is still unwritten.
Sorry, mate.
it lets fans play through a sort of director's cut of the game. So, I mentioned lots of good things. Why was it forgotten? Well, what happens to a lot of good games when they get forgotten? It was timing. It was the last Bond game that EA made with the license, and just as it hit the shelves, the license was passed to one of the biggest rivals, Activision. So, a great performance by Sean Connery was lost to corporate handover and overshadowed by the new big reboot of Casino Royale.
The name is Bond. James Bond. We need to talk.
With Activision now holding the license for Bond and the Daniel Craig grittier film era in full swing in the movies, the philosophy of Bond games was about to change dramatically. It was 2008, so it meant there was one game everyone wanted off the shelves. Activision's plan was simple: give the license to one of the developers of Call of Duty, and that developer was Treyarch. The game, titled 007 Quantum of Solace, was built on the IW 3.0 engine, which is the engine that powered the revolutionary Call of Duty Modern Warfare, because that game is chef kiss. But for me, I think this is where the wheels start to come off. Me personally, I think decision makers at the top of AAA companies couldn't hit a cow's arse with a banjo. They basically see something making money and turn into a Veruca song.
She was a bad egg.
The focus wasn't on being a Bond game. The focus was looking and feeling like a Call of Duty game. The story was another strange choice. They decided to try and put the events of Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace into one game in this narrative, sort of flashback heavy game. Now, the game was only 4 to 5 hours long itself, making that plot really disjointed and hard to follow. If you hadn't seen the films, you were knackered. The gameplay was primarily a first-person game, but the camera would switch into third person when you went into cover. Now, the gameplay and shooting was solid. It was built on the Call of Duty engine by Call of Duty developers. However, myself and other people noticed that although it was a solid action game, it failed to capture the spirit of Bond and a Bond game. Who saw that coming? Stealth mechanics were practically non-existent and easily broken. There were hardly any gadgets when it came to the game, and it felt more like a military shooter than a spy thriller. It was a bland, repetitive series of linear corridors that didn't live up to being Bond. Though the multiplayer was solid, if familiar, it's COD, the game is largely forgotten about today. It was a competent yet soulless shooter that provided a warning for the identity crisis we are about to talk about.
You've got to warn.
Who? I need a name.
Pam. Bouvier. Here. The data is on a card.
If Quantum of Solace was a sign of trouble, then this was the agent that was given a license to kill and take the whole franchise out. Fast forward to 2012. It was the 50th anniversary of Bond, and Daniel Craig was about to take his role in Skyfall, the peak of his Bond career. Just geek out moment, I got this lovely Bond 50th thing at the time. It's got all the movies in. Oh, look at that, man. Look at that. But I don't know whether I like this or not. Skyfall wasn't actually in it because it hadn't released at the time. So they released this with the empty ones, and you had to buy Skyfall to put in. I don't know whether I like that. Is that good because you've got space to add the extra film in, or is it bad because I should have got Skyfall with it? I don't know, I just wanted to show this off. Activision had the license and they wanted to celebrate this big occasion. And the game that they came up with on paper is a fan's dream. The game was called 007 Legends, and the pitch sounds like a no-brainer. You take 6 movies, 6 missions, 1 for each Bond there has been, and you play through the history of Bond. You give it to Eurocom, who are in good stead because they've just made a really good remake of GoldenEye on the Wii. What could go wrong? But then people started to abuse Mary Jane in the Eurocom offices, I think.
Yeah. All these years I've been feeling like I hate karate.
They decided to tell the story and have the missions happen as flashbacks after Daniel Craig's Bond was shot at the start of Skyfall. The problem? Well, one of the problems was that every single Bond, like Sean Connery's Goldfinger and Roger Moore in Moonraker were all played by the likeness of Daniel Craig. So the vibe was off and it felt less like a tribute and more like a fan-made mod. The bigger issue was a rushed development cycle. Here it is again, I need a counter for that one. It was obviously probably rushed to get it out in time for Skyfall coming out at the cinema, but it meant we just had another not as good, not very well made Call of Duty clone. The gameplay reduced down to monotonous firefights against, again, simplistic AI, again, stealth didn't work, and iconic villain boss fights against some of the most iconic villains in Bond history were just down to quick time events. As well as that, the story joining the missions was completely nonsensical. Well, I didn't know what was going on. And those 6 films, well, that meant only 6 levels. Well, actually, the Skyfall level with Daniel Craig was DLC. Can you just release a game fully complete, you money-grabbing bastards? The reception was catastrophic. 007 Legends received some of the worst review scores of any Bond game, and Activision started pulling it from storefronts pretty much as soon as it came out. It was a death blow for Eurocom, and in December 2012, it actually ended up closing them down. After that, Activision let its Bond license run out, and the Bond gaming franchise went dark. And there we have one of the most successful gaming franchises of all time, now no one wanted to touch, and no gamers were being released in over a decade. 007 Legends wasn't just a bad game, it killed a franchise. So there are the Bond games that everyone forgets, including the game that meant we've had no Bond game for 13 years. Until now, let's just hope First Light is a good game. I will be streaming it on YouTube and on Twitch. So drop me a follow if you don't already, and we can experience the first Bond game in over a decade together. These are the forgotten highs and lows of 007 gaming. But what do you think? Did you follow Tomorrow Never Dies onto the PlayStation 1 after GoldenEye? Do you have amazing memories of playing as Connery for one last time? Or were you one of the souls that braved the chaotic and buggy mess of 007 Legends? Let me know your fond memories of gaming with Bond down in the comments below, and let me know if I've missed any of them. If you don't already, drop a subscribe and a like if you enjoyed the video, and have a look there where we have a video of me going over the best Bond that came out, and also a playlist there where we look at some other retrospectives, including some forgotten Resident Evil games. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm just going to do the Bond theme until the sort of timer on how long the end screen runs out.